Subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button. Click the bell button and enjoy the latest uploads.
Tables, part 2. With tables we can do more than just adjust the height, width, border, and border color. Using HTML we can change the cell padding, cell spacing, we can merge cells into other columns and rows as well. This will be our example table through this class, and we will modify this code over and over. Right now it's just a blank table. Before we go on to it, I want to specify one thing. The and NBSP colon. This is the HTML entity for a blank space. And I just wanted to show you that, just so you don't stop and think, well, what is this? So let's take a look at the code real quick. We open our table, set the width to 50%, border to 1. So we have 50% of our screen. We have a 1 border all the way around. We set our cell spacing and cell padding to 0. And we're going to go over what that is right away. Cell padding is the exact same as adding padding to your style attribute. Adding cell padding will apply this value to every single cell in the table. Let's look at this real quick. The only thing we changed from the table that we previously saw is a cell padding. Cell padding is equal to 10 instead of 0, and it displays this. Now this is what our table originally looked like, and this is what our table now looks like. The cell padding, again, is the padding on the inside of every border where I'm moving my mouse here. And that will be in pixels. We don't write pixels because the browser automatically assumes that. Now cell spacing is like the margin of every table cell. This will space out the cells from each other, resulting in a table that looks a little more spread out, kind of like you're looking out of a window. Now here's the code. We kept the cell padding as 10 so that each cell looks a little bit bigger. And our cell spacing, we change that from 0 to 5. And that will give us our 5 pixel spacing in between every cell. Now let's say we took the cell padding away, we changed it back down to 0. Then our table would look very small again, but it would have the exact same padding. We can also merge a lot of our cells together. This is one of the beautiful things about tables, is that we can actually change the span of a cell. So instead of having 3 cells across, like we have at the bottom here, we can merge 2 or more of them together and have one large one. So quickly going over this code again, cell spacing is still 5, cell padding is still 10. In our first table data cell, which is this one right here, we change the col span to 2. Now if we break that up, that means column span, and that means that this one cell here is going to take up column 1 as well as column 2. So it's going to span over 2 columns. Now if we change the column span to 3, this would be one big cell all the way across. And when we add a column span, we also need to remove one of the cells. What I mean by that is that our first cell takes up 2 spaces, which is the exact same as having 2 cells. So if you look below, we still have our 3 cells. If we look above, we've only got 2 cells, but one big one. So if we change our column span to 3, we would actually only need this one, and we could fully remove this. Along with merging cells across, we can also merge them vertically. Now what I mean by that is, instead of merging it from left to right like we did with this one, we can now merge a cell up and down. The way we do that is we use the row span attribute. So I'm just going to quickly go over this because this might get a little bit confusing. We have our first table data cell, which is right here, our top left one, and it takes up 2 cells as well as 2 columns. Next we have our table data cell that has a row span of 2, which means it's going to take up this row, and it's always going to try to take up the one below it. It will never try to take the row above it, it always goes downwards. So now that we have that here, which is this one with the row span of 2, in our next row, which is right across here, we no longer count it in there. So our next row only has 2 cells. Now for example, if our table had 3 rows, and we change the row span to 3, then our large vertical cell here would take up all 3 rows. Again, it has to be at the very top, because if we put this cell in the middle row, it would try to take 3 below it, when there's really only one below it. So knowing all that we know about tables now, we can create a complete structure of a website. We can create a table that has a very specific width, has a border around it. We can merge cells together, and now we can create a template that looks like a normal website. And inside of all these cells is where we're going to put our data. For example, here where we have the row span of 2, I could input an image. Put a banner in here, and I could put links in here. And that gives the site a little bit of structure. I just want to also put it out there that as we get more advanced, we will be leaning away from tables as structures, and we will be leaning a little bit more towards using lists and divs as structures. And once we touch into HTML5, we're going to try and completely remove that, use headers, navs, and footers. But for now, that is something you do not have to worry about. Right now, it would probably be a good idea if you took the next hour or so and just played around with this and created a template that you like, that you could actually see creating a website out of. If you need to, you can go to the previous class and you can look at the 2 common structures that I put there, and you can just copy one of them if you like, using your own code obviously, because it's better practice. And once you have that set, we can move on.